You may be seated. Good evening, everyone. Anyone is welcome to record this meeting, provided they do not disturb the conduct of the meeting. More information is available in the agenda. I'd like to remind everyone that this meeting is being filmed and made available to view in live and archive form via the Council's website. If you are seated in a public gallery, it is possible that the cameras may capture your image. If you wish to avoid being filmed, it is recommended you make a member of staff aware, and they will direct you where to sit. Due to the resurfacing works ongoing in St. Peter's Place, the West Gate garden gates are open this evening, and members of the public should leave the Guildhall via the riverside doors behind you. Should the fire alarm sound, please leave through the nearest safe exits. The assembly point would be the Tower House car park. Do we have any apologies, please?
We have apologies from Councillors Ian Stockley, Jeanette Stockley, Liz Harvey and Simon Worley.
Thank you. I invite Councillor Baldock, Councillor Saul, Councillor Carnac and the Green Group leader to each make a statement that any declarations of interest by members of their respective groups are declared again by any of those members present at this meeting.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Any declarations of interest made by members of the Labour Group are declared again for those present at this meeting.
Apologies for the delay, Lord Mayor. Same for the Lib Dem group.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Same for the Conservative group.
Same for the Green Group, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Would any other member like to make any other declaration at this point? Councillor Old.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Site W7 in the local plan runs close to my house, so I have an OSI, and I should mention I've been given a dispensation by the monitoring officer that allows me to participate in and vote in this debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mellish and then Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Chair. I wish to declare that I have an other significant interest in relation to the local plan item on the basis that my brother lives adjacent to a site within the local plan. However, the MO has provided me with a dispensation regarding this OSI, so I can remain to take part in the debate and vote on this item.
Thank you, Chair. For transparency, I declare that I have another significant interest in relation to the draft local plan being considered this evening on the basis that my property is adjacent to a proposed site which potentially could impact me more than other residents of the district. I've sought and been granted a dispensation by the monitoring officer which enables me to take part in the debate and vote tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Heaver.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd just like to declare that I've had a long association and lots of conversations and correspondence with Save Brooklands Farm campaign in Whitstable, and since being a councillor, I've made it clear to them that I have to keep an open mind in all these debates, and I've made that clear in writing and verbally, and happy to provide evidence of that if challenged.
Thank you. Anybody else? We'll move on to item 3 on the agenda. I would like to invite the leader to propose the recommendations made by Cabinet in the preceding meeting as set out under item 3 in the agenda, and the Deputy Leader to second.
Yeah, Lord Mayor, thank you. It's quite a long piece, so I will take it through slowly. So Cabinet recommends to Council that the Canterbury District Local Plan Regulation 19 Appendix A and the accompanying Sustainability Appraisal and Habitats Regulation assessments is approved for publication for a period of 8 weeks to allow representations on matters of soundness and legal compliance. Secondly, following publication, the Canterbury District Local Plan Regulation 19, Appendix A, and supporting documents, along with representations received, be submitted to the Secretary of State for examination. Point 3, authority to be delegated to the Joint Chief Executives in consultation with the Leader and Deputy Leader to propose changes to the Canterbury District Local Plan Regulation 19, Appendix A, that may be necessary to address soundness issues raised in response to the Regulation 19 publication and during the examination. Point 4, authority be delegated to the Joint Chief Executives in consultation with the Leader and Deputy Leader to make any necessary additional changes and non-major amendments to the Canterbury District Local Plan, Regulation 19, Appendix A, and the accompanying sustainability appraisal and habitat regulation assessments prior to publication, submission and during the examination to help with clarity, consistency, explanation and presentation. That is the proposal that I have, and seek a seconder, please.
Seconded, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Joint Chief Executive Peter Davies to speak.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just a couple of bits from me. Just on amendments, advice has been shared with all councillors. The decision before you tonight as council is a binary one of accepting or rejecting the plan as a whole, and that amendments would not be possible at this stage. I can confirm this is not a constitutional ban on submitting and voting on amendments. Instead, it is a matter of following the legislation and guidance to ensure the local plan to be considered by the Planning Inspectorate is sound and legally compliant. This also avoids the risk of legal challenge. Amendments at this stage are incredibly risky and impractical because the sustainability appraisal would need updating, rerunning to accommodate any changes. Other evidence, transport, viability, habitats, etc. may need updating, and the authority risks challenge that it published a Reg 19 plan without proper supporting assessments and without the plan being ready. The relevant legislation is the Environmental Assessment Plans and Programmes Regulations 2004, Planning Compulsory Purchase Act 2004, and the Town and Country Plan brackets Local Planning brackets England Regulations 2012. The Planning Inspectorate Procedural Guidance dated 27th November 2025 emphasises the importance of plan being ready for examination and following a fair, consistent process. Amendments made on the night of full council will not be supported by the evidence required by that legislation. So if an amendment is made by councillors at this meeting, the publication of the draft local plan must be deferred until the evidence and sustainability appraisals have been updated. Depending on the scale of the amendment, it may even require further Regulation 18 consultation. We've had a clear legal advice from council that the Reg 19 must be informed by a sustainability appraisal for legal compliance. It's a sustainability appraisal that assesses the policies as part of this appraisal. Should councillors wish to amend the plan, then in effect they are rejecting it, as we cannot on the night of the meeting update the sustainability appraisal, consider the findings, consider the implications for other evidence areas, and then revise the Regulation 19 draft local plan and make a decision on that amendment tonight. If councillors are not in agreement with the plan, rather than make amendments that leave the council open to legal challenge, they should consider rejecting it and ask officers to come back with an amended Regulation 19 local plan and sustainability appraisal in the future. On another point, predetermination or having a closed mind, councillors are reminded to have consideration of the advice shared with them by the monitoring officer over the past few months with regards to predisposition and predetermination. As has been made clear by myself and the monitoring officer, we cannot say whether you, as a decision maker, are predetermined in the vote you take tonight. Only a judge at a court can decide that. However, the advice provided to you stands. If you feel that you have entered the chamber with a closed mind, then you should consider whether you take part in the debate and the vote tonight. An accusation of predetermination considered by the courts runs the risk of having a decision taken overturned and could impact the ability for the council to meet the government's deadlines for delivering a new local plan. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. I'd like to invite Councillor So to speak.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. No council finds it easy to produce a local plan. A local plan is about change, and change is rarely comfortable, but leadership means facing difficult choices, not pretending they don't exist. But let's be clear about one thing. Change without a plan is not progress. Change without a plan is chaos. And chaos is one thing that responsible councils must never allow. And sometimes change is exactly what voters ask for. Let's remember the draft local plan we inherited. A plan that carved the district into transport zones that would have increased journey times across the city. A proposal for a new town in Addisham, wiping out countryside and taking prime agricultural land out of production. And a bypass cutting straight through an important ecological landscape. That was the direction of travel. 3 years ago, voters chose a different one. The election brought change to this council, and we brought change to the local plan. We listened then, and we've kept on listening. This local plan is bold on transport, but it's also realistic, deliverable, and environmentally responsible. We may not control the number of homes that government require us to plan for, but we can control how people move around our district. And that choice matters. This plan puts public transport firmly at the centre of our transport network. Roads that work for buses, roads that work for cyclists, and roads that still work for drivers too. Because good transport planning is not about punishing drivers, it's about giving people better choices. This local plan delivers record levels of development on brownfield land. It delivers the affordable homes that people desperately need, and it supports growth in our economy. This plan did not appear overnight. It's taken years of consultation, evidence, scrutiny, and debate. It's also been shaped by a democratic mandate, because 3 years ago, voters made it clear they wanted a different approach to planning in this district. Now, of course, people worry about development near them. That's completely understandable. Ward councillors have worked closely with residents to raise those concerns and improve the plan wherever possible. But we must be honest about the constraints that we face. This council does not control the housing target imposed upon us. But what we do control is whether we plan responsibly or simply bury our heads in the sand. Because refusing to plan does not stop development. It simply means losing control of where it happens. So tonight, the choice before this chamber is actually very simple. We can keep arguing about the problem, or we can start delivering the solution. We can choose delay, or we can choose leadership. We can either plan for growth or have it forced upon us. This local plan chooses to plan it, shape it, and make it work for our residents. Because the real choice tonight is not between development and no development. It is between planned growth and unplanned growth. Between homes delivered properly and homes delivered through appeals. Between taking responsibility or simply complaining about it. This plan takes responsibility. It chooses brownfield over countryside, public transport before gridlock, and homes for local people before political procrastination. And no plan is perfect, but it is responsible. And tonight, this council must choose responsibility over chaos. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock.
Yeah, thank you. Wise words indeed, Mike. Thank you for that. I'll just pick out some bits now that get to maybe more the nitty-gritty of what this is about and pick up some of the things that we feel will be criticised tonight. Let's just face those head on now, because this is a positively prepared document, as it should be legally. It's justified, it's based on evidence. It's going to be effective, we can deliver it. And it's consistent with national policy. No arguments in my view, they are spot on. This is the plan, as Mike touched on, for a generation, 2043. It's a long way off. So this is the start of a journey towards 2043. We're not dropping ourselves into 2043. We need to get to the housing numbers, the homes, the shops, the factories, the nurseries, the schools, everything that is part of our life, because that includes also the quality of the houses we live in and the woods and fields that surround those houses and the way that we deliver them as well. Because biodiversity and the green issues are very much part of it. So let's start that journey, shall we? Because this plan, we believe, delivers what this district needs for a generation to come. It's been shaped by shared vision, as Mike touched on, creating homes for everyone, because every single family, every child, and every person deserves a home that's secure, theirs, and affordable, either to rent or to buy, or whatever it is they do. As Mike touched on earlier again, a transport system that is an evolving transport system. The plan is written as an evolving transport system, and we will touch on that later, I'm sure. It's not suddenly you're going to have to put buses in for an extra 1,000 homes. These things will evolve over time, and I'll come back to that point again. So the delivery of the infrastructure that is often criticised by many people sitting in this room now. If you don't have a plan, you don't have a plan to deliver infrastructure. You can't have a standpipe and a sewer pipe in every field just in case you build a house, which is what you're kind of saying. So this is the plan, so that the plan for delivery of the infrastructure can match it. And that is what we expect of developers. And DSS 16 points that out clearly, as does other documents such as delivery infrastructure plan as well. So let's be clear. This plan sets out what it needs to build and the way in which it's going to be done. And we will touch on that later as well. It's a phased plan. Delivery is a stepped approach, which is what many, many people outside this chamber actually pointed out needed to be done. We've incorporated that in, quite rightly so.
Can you conclude your point,
So
please?
with that, all I'm going to say, this is the best plan to go for. This is the best we can do. So thank you. Please support it willingly, wholeheartedly, and be part of the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We will now move to debate this item, and this can be debated and amended. I just wanted to remind everyone that you all have 3 minutes to speak. I'll give some leeway, but if you go over, I might be stopping you in the middle of your conversation. Thank you.
No one wants to go.
We're ready to, anyone? Councillor Prentice.
Had to be someone. Yeah, there are many, thank you, Lord Mayor. And there are many voices that have been lost or have not been heard loudly enough during the drafting of this local plan. But I want to make the moral argument for this plan. And we need homes for everyone. Young people at home with mum and dad working full time, a population that has now started working at home in much larger numbers, and increasingly an older population that needs carers, students, small families, larger families, families that don't fit into neat categories, single people, people with specific accessibility needs. They all need somewhere to live. And how we lived 50, 60, 70 years ago and far beyond, when much of our housing stock was built, actually, has long been surpassed by changes in society and just natural growth in the population. And when our children go to school, the relationships we have with our loved ones and those we cherish, those sorts of relationships, the way society is different. So we need a local plan that's fit for how people live today and not just how people lived in the past. Our friends and neighbours, our residents of this district, they may have looked, that have highlighted the incredible biodiversity of our district, have rightly highlighted what makes our city, towns and villages special. And it makes us so privileged to live in such a nature-rich environment. But there is always another story, a narrative that's not always heard. And as a ward councillor, I have heard the stories of people living in unsuitable, expensive or insecure accommodation in our city, sometimes just days from homelessness. And sometimes we only get to them when it's too late, but fortunately, sometimes our officers and our local charities are able to step in and help. Thank goodness they're there. I was briefly homeless about 20 years ago, thanks to a rogue buy-to-let landlord. I have briefly experienced the horror of this situation. And it's scary when there is nowhere to go at night that isn't beyond your own front door. Many people in this room won't have had that experience, but some will know that feeling. So we can and we will do better to ensure that the people who make our district what it is, our public servants, people working in the NHS, in the schools, the universities, the colleges, in the retail and hospitality sector, our Kanenko staff, our bus drivers, our train drivers, our small and large businesses, people working in tourism, many more. They all have a secure home of their own, and we need to plan for that. That alternative story, that narrative that's not always heard. But there is a story that's about this place, about this district. That's always changed with the times. Our cities never stood still. Even, I think as is quoted in the literature, that holy, blissful martyr's resting place, reachable only after a journey through the sweet breaths of April on the Shire's end of England. That lovely romantic vision of where we live. It's always been expanded and rebuilt, sometimes a bit brutally, sometimes with a lot of care and attention. So I have a lot more to say, but I support this local plan. I urge my colleagues to vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prentice. Councillor Mellish and then Councillor Brady.
Thank you, Chair. Why do I think it is important that we pass the local plan tonight? Well, for me, it's a personal, really personal basis. I was born on a Bellingham Council estate in southeast London in the 1950s. 7 of us in a mid-1930s terrace council house. Stone floors, coal-fire heating, washing down in a copper or a vat and squeezed through a mangle. Some of you may actually remember that. And shared bathwater with my sister when we were young to save the hot water. As a basic, as that house was, it was a home that was safe and ours. To me. And it's well looked after by the council. We were not subject to the whims of avaricious landlords. It was that security that gave us the opportunity to play, to study, to grow, and in our own ways to be successful. That's what I want for the residents of Herne Bay, and in particular for the people who elected me, the residents of Heron Ward. In our own Canterbury district, if you live in Barham, the average male life expectancy is 82 years, and a healthy life expectancy of 67 years. In Blean, it's 83 and 68 healthy life years. In Gorrell, it's 85 and 64 years. In Heron Ward, the average male can expect to live until he is 75, and a healthy life of 58 years. This is a disgrace. This difference is being able to live in a decent life is brought about by poverty. Poverty of decent housing, poverty of opportunity to study and learn, where people must live in cramped and mould-infested flats and houses. Poverty of opportunity because of low expectations and little opportunity for employment. No access to adequate training, and if they can get training or indeed employment, nowhere to come back to study or settle in a place where you can be alone, if only briefly, and relax and feel warm and safe. With its focus on social and affordable housing, this local plan gives residents the opportunity for a decent living standard, to get out of those damp, dingy places, to get out of mum and dad's house and finally get a place of your own. This local plan is a lot more than just housing numbers. It is about building communities through its environment and biodiversity programme, developing a transport system that works, its commitment to building employment, to culture and to tourism. It is a plan that brings these elements together. There will be those tonight who will introduce what are in effect wrecking amendments. Any amendment passed tonight means the whole plan goes out the window. From their nice 3, 4-bedroom Edwardian bay-fronted homes, they want to deny the opportunity of residents in Heron Ward to have a better life. They can wait for that better housing, can't we? That better opportunity, that chance for a job, can't they? The residents of Heron Ward deserve better. This local plan offers those chances that I had growing up. chances that orchids deserve.
Thank you, Councillor Mellish. Councillor Brady and then Councillor Bland.
Lord Mayor, as a councillor representing a rural ward, I'm here today to speak up for my rural residents. They care deeply about their countryside, their village identity and the services they rely on. So I want to make the case clearly. The draft local plan 2042-43 is far better for rural communities than the 2017 local plan. It includes tools to protect villages. The new plan prioritises brownfield sites, something the 2017 plan failed to do. This is a huge shift and a major benefit for the countryside. It brings in far stronger environmental protections that we've ever had. It officially maps and safeguards green gaps, local green space, the Blean Woodland Complex, wetlands, local wildlife sites, sites of special scientific interest, and the Kent Downs National Landscape. Again, not in the 2017 plan, not to this scale or with this clarity. It also introduces phased sequencing of development, ensuring development only comes forward when the supporting infrastructure is ready. Rural infrastructure also benefits from stronger climate and flood risk planning. It identifies overtopping zones, coastal change areas, and areas needing improved drainage, giving rural areas better protection from flooding and extreme weather. We also gain from a stronger rural environment with the new requirement of 20% biodiversity net gain, creating hedgerows, wildlife corridors, pollinator routes and nature recovery networks, not tarmacking a bypass through the countryside like the last draft. And finally, the plan supports rural jobs and local businesses, including agriculture, food production and viticulture, new economic opportunities that will help keep rural areas thriving. But the most important point, which opposition parties will not tell you, Lord Mayor, they will not tell you the benefits of having an updated local plan or what happens if we don't have an updated plan. Because of historic delays and an absence of protection, this council is still under the presumption in favour of sustainable development. Landowners submit development plans and in presumption, developers have the power. We lose much of our say over what gets built and where. So if we delay this plan or vote it down, we are voting to stay in presumption instead of putting in processes which aim to take us out of it. A no vote is a vote to give developers more control, to leave rural communities exposed and underprotected. And as a councillor for a rural ward, I do not want that to happen. It is a clear choice, Lord Mayor. The 2042-43 plan delivers protections. The 2017 plan does not. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brady. Councillor Bland and then Councillor Forrester.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I shall be voting to submit for Reg 19 consultation this new draft local plan together with its accompanying transport strategy and other supporting documents. The plan is ambitious, yet sound and legally compliant with planning law and statutory frameworks. Representing a rural ward, like my fellow councillor to my left, I welcome the proposed designated settlement boundaries for the most sustainable rural settlements. And I'm pleased that there is finally designated provision for travellers, as has been statutorily required for a long time. Some may argue problems with water supply make the plan unsound. I am satisfied, however, that is not the case for the following reasons. The plan demonstrates close liaison with all other authorities responsible for infrastructure, including utilities. The plan is phased with regular reviews over years commencing sometime 2030 and finishing in 2042-43. In that time, Broad Oak Reservoir comes into operation in 2035. And this year, the Labour government has laid out its new vision for water white paper, which will tackle water industry failures and introduce further investment. So I'm voting for all the big positives in this plan. Homes for people who need them. More homes for those on our housing needs register. Homes that are sustainably designed. Biodiversity net gains of 20%. Action to make the modal shift from the car to active travel, walking, cycling and more buses by 2042. More business and job opportunities, leading to a pleasanter city, towns and countryside. And much more. You won't get any of that by following populist political naysayers. You'll only get that by voting for this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bland. Councillor Forrester and then Councillor Flanagan.
Thank you, Chair. I first want to say thank you to all the residents who've contacted me in recent weeks about this plan and those who are here tonight. But I believe this local plan takes a responsible, strategic and evidence-based approach to address one of the most pressing challenges facing our district. That's the sustainable management of our water supply and wastewater infrastructure. Canterbury, Whitstable and Herne Bay are growing communities. The local plan sets out a long-term strategy, identifying locations for new homes and, crucially, the infrastructure needed to support them. Importantly, the plan sets out policies around the timing and phasing of infrastructure, specifically water and sewage, so that it keeps pace with development rather than lagging behind. It's embedded at policy DS15, but this includes a requirement for developers to produce an infrastructure funding and delivery programme to secure planning permission. The same policy also makes clear that this council will use planning conditions to manage developments where the delivery of critical infrastructure is shown to be needed before occupation takes place. There's a requirement for us, the council, to publish an infrastructure delivery plan setting specific site allocations that Southern Water have told us will require sewage network enhancements. This means that developers will now know they need to factor such improvements into their programmes. The local plan does not shy away from the real-world pressures our district has experienced in recent months. And these issues underscore why a robust, forward-looking local plan like this isn't optional, it's essential for our residents. The proposal for the new freshwater reservoir at Broadoak, as Councillor Bland stated, is a substantial long-term investment to provide additional water capacity and resilience for our district. Water companies are currently updating their WRMPs for 2029, and they're aware of their need to find solutions to the increasing housing targets. The step delivery of the plan gives these water companies time to find solutions in the short term and propose long-term solutions to the water scarcity, which is the Broadoak Reservoir, amongst other solutions. Under questioning from scrutiny on this point, South East Water said that headroom in our patch is currently fragile, but did not agree with the accusation they wouldn't be able to cope in future. Equally important to residents, particularly and rightly those on the coast, is wastewater management. Our local plan strengthens policies to ensure that sewage capacity is assessed early and upgrades are delivered in step with development. These upgrades include the doubling of treatment capacity at Swellcliffe by 2030. In voting against this plan, you will not stop development. Instead, you'll run the risk of unmanaged speculative development that would proceed without coordinated infrastructure, leaving our communities and residents to deal with the consequences. It's our responsibility tonight to our residents and our communities to ensure that growth is sustainable, environmentally, practically and responsibly. This plan strengthens our ability to do exactly that. For these reasons and the well-being of our district, I urge you to support the local plan as I will. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forrester. Councillor Flanagan, and then Councillor Mackenzie, and then Councillor Butcher.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The local plan process is by nature a complicated one. There is an enormous responsibility on all of us to get it right. We have to provide the houses our communities need in the right places and the infrastructure to make it all work. But there are other responsibilities that we cannot ignore. They include making the right decisions on behalf of our local residents, making the choices that they want that will enhance their communities. But most importantly, we have the responsibility to listen. I've listened to my residents of Chesfield Ward who were kind enough at the ballot box to put their faith in me. I've read through the submissions, the proposals, the briefing notes, comments that make up the draft local plan. I've listened to the briefings, studied the presentations, asked questions of our council officers. I've read the many emails that residents have sent over the last 3 years, and in particular, the hundreds have been sent in just the last few weeks. And Lord Mayor, I find it impossible to accept that my role as an elected councillor is to ignore our local residents, to impose developments that they implacably oppose, or to ignore my belief that this local plan will not make life better for Chesfield, for the people I represent. Through the sites at Golden Hill, Bodkin Farm and Brooklands, Chesfield Ward will see an increase of 60% in housing numbers without the appropriate infrastructure to support it. Time and again, residents have voiced their concerns to me about the traffic impact, flooding, sewage risk, loss of green open space and agricultural land. 2,000 people did that alone for just Brooklands in last year's consultation, and I think they're right. The real tragedy, Lord Mayor, is that this council, like many others, is subjected to the most ridiculous method of calculating housing numbers by central government, a method that bases the housing need on the existing number of houses in the area rather than population growth. A process so flawed that it ignores local concerns for infrastructure and gives developers carte blanche to develop every scrap of land in the face of local opposition just to meet an arbitrary target. It is a process, Lord Mayor, that does our local villages, communities and residents a huge disservice. So, Lord Mayor, I have therefore decided that, having listened carefully throughout this entire process, and I will continue to listen to this debate, my position is that I cannot vote for this plan in its current form against the will of the people of my ward and the surrounding area. And for that matter, and for the reasons I've given, I intend to vote against the plan tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flanagan. Councillor Mackenzie. Councillor Mackenzie and then Councillor Butcher.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Our politics needs more politicians who keep the promises they make when they're getting elected and follow through on the commitments they make to their residents. Trust in politics is at an all-time low, and it is incumbent on all of us to change this. And for that reason, and I'm going to explain my reasoning in just a moment, I am minded to support the plan this evening. When Councillor Moses and I were seeking election in 2023, we made 3 core local pledges to Surrey Ward residents based on the wider promises made in the Labour manifesto. This draft local plan and transport strategy delivers to an extent on all 3 of them. Firstly, we pledged to oppose the Eastern Bypass and the bonkers zoning model. This was felt strongly in Surrey and Fordwich, and they have both been removed from these strategies. Secondly, we pledged to force developers to build truly affordable homes for local people, and with firm requirements for affordable housing and new requirements for social housing, this plan will deliver thousands more social and affordable homes in our district, while at the same time building more on brownfield land and building homes to be carbon neutral ready, so they are sustainable into the future. When 1.3 million people nationally are on social housing waiting lists, and 170 households, including 108 children, are homeless in temporary accommodation in our district, what could be more important than delivering more social and affordable housing in our area? Finally, we pledged to deliver the infrastructure that Surrey needs, speed up the delivery of new schools and protect our rivers. These plans commit to the extension of the Surrey rail platform and delivery of the Broadeck Reservoir and nutrient neutrality wetland between Fordwich and Northgate. Several of the allocations in Surrey Ward factor in shopping facilities, open spaces, business space in the development mix. 2 secondary schools with 6th forms and SEND provision have been allocated in our district. Tougher policies for infrastructure timing and phasing, including for sewerage. Refusal of any development that increases the risk of flooding, a requirement for development to incorporate suitable drainage systems that are appropriate for the location of the development. I also understand that a lot of residents in Surrey Ward and across the district are concerned about the cumulative impact on traffic.
So it is important to highlight that these plans do another big thing that we said we would do when we were getting elected in 2023, set a bus-first strategy. That is the long-term vision for reducing traffic congestion and incorporating more sustainable transport methods that we committed to then, and that these plans translate into action now. It will take time to get there, but this plan will guide us the way. Thank you.
Councillor Butcher and then Councillor Bockman.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My mother and father had to live with my father's parents. My mum hated it, as do a lot of families who are now referred to as extended families. In 1953, when I was 3 months old, my mum and dad were given a council house on London Road Estate, which they rented. The site where London Road Estate was built was undeveloped rural or agricultural land before it was designated for post-war social housing. The government then had the foresight to know that houses had to be built. As the Labour government now knows, we have to build houses. If you vote against the local plan, remember all the families across the district you are denying a house that will be not just a house, but a home for so many families. I support.
Thank you, Councillor Butcher. Councillor Bockman and Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Over the years, I've spoken to quite a few residents, or many residents even, in Thannington and Wincheap, and there's always been a common thread in the issues that they've brought to me. It was either the condition of their properties and where will their children live in the future and how they will be able to afford housing. And I just want people to remember that as I go on. We need a genuine mix of affordable and social housing, and this local plan is our opportunity to make sure this happens. It is how we provide not only homes, but also the schools, roads and services that must sit alongside this. Getting the phased delivery of family-sized 3-bedroom homes is especially important. We hear the word luxury thrown around quite a lot, but luxury is something indulgent, something extra. A family home is a necessity. These are homes where children can sleep safely, where families can avoid overcrowding, and where people can work, relax, study and thrive. I've noticed that the Green Group did suggest that 56,000 people will be imported into Canterbury to fill these supposed luxury homes. I just wonder whether the National Green Party would think this sounds right. Across our district, there are a number of people who do not meet the criteria or are not even on the Kent Home Choice list because they have yet to be assessed. They are still local people in need. Some are living in cramped conditions, some in converted sheds, garages, some are still sofa surfing. These people deserve better. Families, single people, key workers all need to stay close to their support networks. This is how our communities are built for the future. Under the current rules, 2 children under 10 can share regardless of sex, and 2 older children can share a room regardless of sex, up to the age of 20. These families are not asking for luxury, they are asking for a bigger space so that a family can develop. We also know that overcrowding can place enormous strain on families. Studies have shown that this can increase the risk of violence in the home, and we do not need to shy away from this, nor should we. We have residents who need adapted housing, proper adaptations like hoists, wet rooms and wider doorways. These simply cannot be fitted into these tiny, unsuitable homes. Right now, we do not have enough of these type of properties to meet the needs. Nationally, there are over 125,000 young people facing homelessness or are going to be homeless. We need to give homes that give them a stable start in life and a foot on the ladder. We need homes for care workers, teachers, hospitality staff, apprenticeships and young adults trying to stand on their own 2 feet. And again, our structured local plan, along with other councils' local plans, will help deliver this. I am proud to have voted for applications that have made good use of brownfield sites, and I'm pleased that the local plan includes many more. I note that the Green Group did not actually vote recently for those brownfield site developments, although they did support the vote for the A2 slip road in Wincheap. This is why a thoughtful local plan gives us this control. It ensures houses are built with the right infrastructure and amenities in place. This local plan is how we deliver social and affordable housing for the people who live here now and who need it. Without a plan, development becomes speculative and chaotic.
Can you round up, please?
Yep, no plan is a plan to fail, and I believe our residents deserve a lot better than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just remind those who are in the public gallery to keep things respectful? And if you have to do that again, you will have to leave. I'm sorry. Can we have Councillor Watkins and then Councillor Carnac, please?
So, evening all. Good to see you all. Good to see residents here in force as well this evening. I was in the previous administration involved with the previous but 2 versions of this draft local plan, and I know how tricky it is. That there are some positives I think that have shifted across from that draft into the new one, and I continue to support like the improvements to housing, energy efficiency, and to biodiversity net gain. I think they will cut residents' energy bills, and they will help nature prosper despite climate change. But I've only got 3 minutes, and in the round, I do not see any great listening exercise from the administration in terms of putting this latest draft together, and I'm going to provide some examples in the time I've got. For instance, on transport, yes, some individual measures I could support, but the general way in which it's been proposed has been far too rushed and without the underlying data and assumptions spelt out for us as councillors to do our democratic duty in scrutinising what this really means and whether it is right for our community. That results in us spending £18 million to build a loss-making park and ride car park at Wincheap. I haven't met any residents who think that's a good use of taxpayer funds. I mean, secondly, on infrastructure, you're trying to convince us it's infrastructure first, but frankly, it's infrastructure maybe. I fear that in my own ward of Greenhill, the 100 new houses will be built, but the new secondary school adjacent to that, which we desperately need up on the coast, won't arrive. We're already hearing whispers to that effect, and it's not fair to residents who get the housing but not the infrastructure. Another example of not listening is the persistence of this administration ploughing on with a plan to build housing on the Beacon Road hockey fields, one of our last spaces with the potential for community provision in the centre of Herne Bay. It will only provide 20 houses. That is just 0.1% of the district housing target, almost nothing. So why not abandon the housing plan and make it a vibrant community space instead? I ran a large-scale survey of local residents on this topic, and over 90% wanted community use. Again, where's the listening in that? So in short, I do feel this local plan is being rushed. Certain aspects have been brought forward to committees only in the last month, and it does, as a result, have shortcomings. I can't accept it represents residents' best interests as it stands. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councillor Watkins. Councillor Carnac, and then Councillor Tumble.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Let's be clear, this council is in presumption and is likely to stay that way. Having a local plan doesn't mean that houses will be built to meet annual targets set by the government. The 2017 local plan has been suspended for a significant amount of time since 2022, first stymied by the Stodmarsh nutrient neutrality issue and latterly by the economic downturn in construction. Look around the district and see just how little house building is taking place on large strategic sites. progress being made on building new homes at Mountfield Park being a case in point. So please, let's not pretend this evening that voting through this unsatisfactory plan will stop the district from being prey to speculative development. While we need a local plan in place, there's no argument about that. It needs to be sound. This plan isn't. This could have been ironclad and ambitious. Instead, on its third outing since 2022, the language has changed to asking us to support least worst options, such as at Wincheap. That's depressing in its mediocrity. What happened to the concept of a garden village? After hearing Lord Taylor of Gosmore speak in 2019 about how local plans can deliver housing in sustainable and inspirational ways, what we've got yet again is a plan full of bolt-on development that is infrastructure light. The hope of an infrastructure-led plan has disappeared, whatever has been said so far this evening. In what I've described previously as the whack-a-mole approach to selecting sites, it seems the process of deciding where to place 23,000 new homes has become simply anywhere that's politically expedient for this cabinet, resulting in a reliance on technically complicated sites or insufficient highways infrastructure. Therefore, there is a risk of challenge at the next stage, and as a result, all the things we hope for, like coastal secondary schools, lower density housing estates, affordable housing, more open space and greater protection for our precious landscapes, biodiversity and nature, could now be at risk of removal or being watered down. This administration, while saying it's listening to residents, has, by trying to avoid development in some places but not in others, left the district with an inadequate, complicated and risky supply pipeline that will be difficult to defend at the Section 19 stage, but will be way too easy for developers to attack. That means we face the very grave possibility of a local plan that puts back in sites that many fiercely objected to in 22, 23 and 25, but without the infrastructure that most of us would have wanted to see. It appears none of the lessons from the 2017 local plan or from the intervening years have been learned. Therefore, I can't vote for this plan to go forward in its current state. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carnac. Councillor Turnbull and then Councillor Auld.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And I want to say thank you to Andrew Thompson and his team for their work on this extremely difficult task of creating a local plan. And I'm pleased to see there's a strong focus on environment and biodiversity and building standards in there. However, we've been hearing a lot about housing needs, local housing needs. Green Group is not, well, the Greens are not anti-housing, in spite of what people seem to say about us. That's not what our protests are about. We are about homes that are needed in this district for local people, and we're hearing a lot about the need for social housing tonight. But this council has not made any commitment to build social housing, which it could well have done. And that's really disappointing not to see that in there and leaving it to the whims of developers. We also need a dose of realism here. We live in a water scarcity area, an area of low rainfall and high population, and that is a fact. As representatives of South East Water pointed out at the scrutiny meeting recently, they cannot magically increase the amount of water available. Their comments made it clear they will struggle to meet demand going forward. Of course, recent events demonstrate that they're already struggling. They've not given reassurance that they will be able to meet future demand, but they are not permitted to state boldly that it is impossible to do so. All the policies and phasing in the world aren't going to change this fact. This district has a serious water resource issue. It does not have capacity for 23,000 new homes, that is up to 60,000 people now, nor have we any reason to believe that it will in 2043. Southern Water has been making improvements in recent years thanks to persistent pressure from local people, but they too are playing catch-up in order to cater for existing population levels rather than updating an effective network for future demand. The plans to increase capacity at Swalecliffe, for example, do little more than meet the needs of the current population. This district does not have capacity for the numbers of houses that are in this plan, as Councillor Flanagan's already said, and I don't understand why this administration hasn't gone back to the government and said this housing target is wrong and unsustainable for our district. And finally, I see nothing in this plan which will help address a whole range of traffic issues in Whitstable and much that will exacerbate those issues. The transport strategy talks about new bus services, but the promised bus links at Whitstable to Whitstable Heights, for example, have not materialised 4 years after the first residents moved in. We're not talking about what's happening next week. We're talking about 4 years down the road. It's still not there. So finally, with bus services beyond the control of the council, how can we guarantee that bus links to the south of the town will materialise and other services which are mentioned in the transport strategy? And as additional services and if they are provided, will they be as additional services or will they just destroy an existing effective service such as happened with the Triangle route in our area recently? Thanks.
Councillor Auld.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I want to associate myself with the points made by Councillor Flanagan earlier. His comments show that he has listened to residents, exactly what he and all of us here were elected to do. But I want to make some broader points to add to the points he makes about development in Chesfield. We all agree there's a housing crisis. Local people need homes. This local plan is supposed to set out how we meet that need. But does it? Yes, there's a housing crisis, but it's not a housing crisis of supply. We do not need a centrally imposed target of 23,000 new homes when there are 1.5 million empty homes in England. I know there are 3,000 people on our own housing list, a sobering figure, but one that does not justify the scale of development proposed. The housing crisis is not a crisis of housing supply, it is a crisis of affordability. Canterbury has one of the highest ratios of house prices to earnings in the country. High house prices, low median earnings. And that's a key fact that's not reflected in this plan. The council's own draft housing strategy states that 90% of households here cannot afford to buy homes on the open market. 90%. That's a shocking figure. The local plan requires that 30% of so-called affordable homes should be for ownership. Homes that would require an income nearly 10 times the district's median wage. So despite the powerful emotive speeches that we've heard this evening, this plan will not help the 90% of households that are already priced out of the local housing market. So what about renting? The housing needs assessment, one of our documents, is clear. 80% of rental housing need in the district is for affordable or social rent. But the plan dilutes that requirement, not to meet the needs of residents, but to meet the needs of developers under the pretext of viability. My reference for that is read the 2026 viability plan. So where does all this leave us? We're told we must vote for this plan or risk chaos and predatory development, a gun held to the heads of every single councillor in this chamber. But as Councillor Carnac has pointed out, even with this plan, the district will remain in presumption for the foreseeable future because we fail the housing delivery test and are likely to fail it every year for the foreseeable future. So sites like the Blean could still come forward with a presumption in favour of its approval. And I cannot and will not accept responsibility for preparing a local plan that fails the most fundamental test. The fundamental test is to provide affordable homes for local people. This plan does not do that. Local people need homes.
Would you round up,
this
please?
plan does not deliver them. For that reason, and the reason set out by Councillor Flanagan, I cannot support this plan. Thank you.
Councillor Botwell and Councillor Paget.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Firstly, I appreciate the huge amount of work put in by officers preparing this plan over many years, through several iterations, consulting dozens of organisations, trawling through thousands of documents and hundreds of representations.
However, whatever the cost in time and money expended in producing the plan, that investment cannot be used as a reason for not challenging it and, if necessary, rejecting it. The first test that we as councillors should apply is that it is meeting the needs of the communities we represent. Will it provide the social and elderly housing which we actually need? Will the new housing be located close to nature, to amenities and to transport hubs, etc.? A second test is whether the existing infrastructure, the roads, water supply, sewage system, medical facilities, etc., have the capacity to supply the proposed developments, or that they can realistically be upgraded to do so. And, by inference, will the plan help clean up our rivers and sea so that they are safe to swim in? And will it reduce the gridlock that jams our roads on a daily basis? The third test, and ultimately the most important, is does the plan tackle head-on and ambitiously the two existential crises, climate and biodiversity, that face us? It fails on all three tests. It is not providing the right housing on the right sites. It has executive housing on sites selected using the hokey-cokey method, which is random and irrational, chosen to suit landowners and developers, not local people's needs. The road, water and sewage infrastructure is already failing, and there is no realistic indication in the plan that this will be improved. Quite the reverse. On the third test, the climate and biodiversity crises which threaten our very existence, a few scraps have been thrown at the problems, but they are weak, unambitious, and subject to caveats that will allow them to be excluded. But more than that, the negative impacts of all the new developments will dwarf any small gains. Some say that to reject the plan would amount to cruelty to our residents, because developers will have freedom to build wherever they want. But we're in that situation already. We currently have a local plan and we're still in presumption. We've granted permission for thousands of new houses, and yet we're still in presumption. The development of the hill in Littlebourne is not in the existing plan, but it has just been approved at appeal in the face of huge local opposition. The people of Littlebourne are going to be subject to cruelty, with a 50% increase in population, 50% more sewage, where it is already coming up through the floors, and where the water supply itself is at risk from pollution. The Blean development at the University of Kent has been taken out of the plan, but the university still intends to proceed, so the people of Blean may be subject to cruelty too. Landowners and developers can bypass the local plan with ease, because the system is geared primarily towards meeting their needs, not ours. It is a system imposed by local and national government diktat on an unwilling population. How can I vote for that?
Councillor Pageant and then Councillor Jones. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I must begin my comments on this local plan by addressing housing, which is always an emotive topic for many residents. We indeed need to ensure we have sustainable supply of housing in the district to support the needs of our residents, including those with accessibility needs and young people trying to get on the housing ladder. But the numbers do not add up and this plan is not sustainable. I have particular concerns that have been raised with me by residents in Herne and Broomfield, which I would like to mention now. On the specifics of the proposed housing, I remain somewhat open-minded with pros and cons to many of them, but I cannot ignore the comments raised with me by residents in my own ward of Herne and Broomfield, who feel deeply let down by the plan for another 250 houses. Residents have described that Herne is already feeling less like a village, and the proposals in the local plan add yet more housing in such close proximity to the development being undertaken at Lower Herne Village. The additional housing currently going up here is already causing increased pressures on services, and this would only be set to continue with these proposals. Where is the GP surgery? Where will the children go to school? How will they get there with no commitment on bus routes to serve new developments? Many issues still go unaddressed, and yet more houses are being proposed. The centre of Herne Village still struggles with congestion and poor air quality. This is not tackled by this plan. The proposal is one that residents have suggested would cause further challenges in Lower Herne Road, which is already struggling with increased traffic, unauthorised lorry traffic and poor road surface, and 200 new homes on the proposed site at Home Farm would increase this congestion. More generally, an influx of a further 23,000 houses in the district over the course of this plan is not adequately supported by the infrastructure it desperately needs. I recognise that housing targets for the district are not set by the council. However, residents have grave concerns about the impact on our roads, public services, local amenities and crucially our water supply, which cannot be ignored, so the council must be vocal about this to the government. I've had a number of residents contact me to say just this, and I imagine other councillors have too. The commitment to biodiversity net gain policy is great to see, but this was carried over from the previous Conservative administration. We indeed must need to do what we can to protect and support our local wildlife as well as our local people. Returning to infrastructure, just a couple of weeks ago we had South East Water at Scrutiny Committee telling us that their current strategy does not meet this demand for water supply, which is a real concern. And I think we must as a council urge the government to consider the strain on our utilities in the district when they set these targets. Last summer, the residents of Herne and Broomfield and in other parts of Herne Bay and Whitstable experienced firsthand the issues that arise from supply issues, going days without water, which is truly unacceptable. South East Water told the Scrutiny Committee that they have a gap that they are currently not able to bridge by not being able to supply over 4,000 new homes up to 2035. In fact, Broad Oak Reservoir seems too little too late. With these concerns from residents in mind, I don't feel I can support this local plan going to Regulation 19, as I feel there are elements that must be reconsidered. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pageant. Councillor Jones and then Councillor Harvey.
Hey, technology. First of all, I just want to say thank you to obviously all the officers who've worked really hard and other members regarding the local plans. A lot of work gone into it. But having listened to the debate this evening and followed it for a while, my concerns are, there's a few to be fair, are basically the transport plan for me. I'm really concerned the bus strategy itself will fail to deliver what you are intending it to do. And I know it's not a light switch moment. It can't just all happen. It's going to go on today. I understand that. But fundamentally for me, when you run a business or have a business, if you're not in charge of that system, you can't make and plan for all the decisions regarding that system throughout its business life. For example, you could plan whatever bus services you want here, there and everywhere, but if the company are not willing to supply that or change their mind, where does that leave us? And that concerns me, because over time when the bus park and rides are running, if people are not using them, the strategy is to remove the town centre car parks or the city centre car parks here. If that doesn't work, we're going to take a lane out of the Reims Way and put a bus lane and a bike lane in. So basically, anyone who travels by car, the people who 80% of journeys, unfortunately or fortunately, depends on your view, come to the city to spend their money, deliver here, it will be the bottleneck of all bottlenecks, in my view. I've driven around this district since 1982, and that scenario worries me. Now, I would also agree with you about the zoning, which I wasn't in and around that time. That's not an excuse, that's just a fact. I certainly would not have agreed with that. And I thought, well, actually, that's gone. I was happy for that. But looking at this, I would never support this, where it ceases to snarl up everything to do with people who just want to get about their day. It doesn't help them at all. Not everybody's going to travel on a bus. It's not going to work. We've got fewer bus services in our district now, and it's not your fault. It's not your fault. It's the fault of the local bus company who've decided that they don't want to run rural service. They don't want to do this. So it worries me that happens, will happen to us. And therefore, I'm not convinced that a bus-first strategy work in this particular setting. The other thing I would say, also being a rural council like others, and what Councillor Paget just said, like Herne and Broomfield, we were very disappointed to find out that another 250 homes were going to be put in probably what would be the last field between the woods and Greenhill will be taken up by another 200 homes. Well, we'd already accepted 1,700 in our village, and I just think it feels like a stab in the back, I'll be quite honest. That's how people and the parish council feel we've been treated with this particular scenario. Then the plan itself, when it evolves, and when you talk about being in presumption, this will not take us out of presumption. Again, this bit is out of all of our hands. What needs to change to make sure that we have sustainability on all of our planning sites is a sustainability to have fresh water and sewage taken from it. Currently, that is not happening. It's not, and the law states it doesn't matter what we say in planning. we have to grant it, irrespective. They have to provide a connection.
Could you round up, please?
We need to change that. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Well, we need to change that in as soon as possible, because building 23,000 homes, knowing that we can't flush the loo, is madness. I'm sorry, that it really is. And that's why I will not be able to support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It's a professional and well-presented plan, and I'd like to second Councillor Jones said, commend Andrew and his team for pulling this all together within the various constraints. There are some excellent aspects, grand ambitions for social and affordable housing and biodiversity net gain, of which I wholeheartedly approve. Unfortunately, I don't believe it's a great plan for any of the people of the districts, other than a few millionaire developers. Second, what Councillor Auld was saying very eloquently as well. Yes, we have a housing crisis. We need houses. But the crisis isn't made up of hordes of middle-class families desperate to escape Stoke Newington so they can buy a 4-bed house in Whitstable. Crisis is huddled in doorways just up there, up the high street in Nason's doorway, next door, and the row of tents that's relocated conveniently out of sight down the side of Broomfield flyover, which is passed unnoticed by thousands of drivers daily. Crisis is in the tens of millions of pounds spent by councils across the country to provide short-term housing, and that's just for those in the most urgent need. There's been talk tonight of avaricious rogue landlords. Well, the new Renters' Rights Bill, Section 24 and other legislation is causing a mass exodus of landlords from the private sector, which is going to put a further 14 million renters at risk of homelessness. This is who we need to house. And this plan does nothing to address these most urgent issues. And we ought to be challenging these house build numbers that are imposed upon us. I feel if this administration really cared about the crisis, which is impacting most on our young and vulnerable, then they would have used every available council-owned brownfield site to build social homes. And at the risk of being accused of running down Herne Bay again, I'll point out several vacant council-owned sites in my area alone that could have been turned into top quality, zero carbon social homes. The old ambulance station in my ward, for example, designated for housing in the previous plan, but empty and boarded up. The Tivoli site, oh dear, it's empty more than 8 years. It seems regardless of the administration in charge, it's one battle after another there. Neptune Hub, the old council office is empty for 3 years now. Could be easily used. And then not one, but 2 boarded up seafront toilet blocks, one of which has been empty for decades. We have the sites, we have the money, there's the motivation. I'm also confused as to how councillors standing up for their residents when the water ran out last summer, shouting loud about South East Water, and yet then supporting a plan that we know is going to leave more than 23,000 residents with no fresh, clean water. How is a councillor who stood alongside protesters on Tankerton slopes calling for the nationalisation of Southern Water now be supporting a plan that we know will cause more sewage to be dumped in our seas? How is a councillor claiming loudly to be supporting the rights of rivers, yet supporting a plan that we know will add more pollution?
Could you round up, please?
Will add more pollution to our glorious chalk stream Stour. I know we've come a long way. Tell me, where do the children play?
Thank you. Do we have any more speakers? Councillor Ricketts.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I don't think I ever checked into the meeting, sorry. There's a lot to talk about here, and I have 3 minutes, and unfortunately I'm going to have to take most of it talking about transport, as is my cross to bear these days. But I am happy to do that because I think this transport strategy is excellent. We've been accused of being unambitious this evening, and if you want ambitious, then I think you should look at the transport strategy again, because I've been told consistently over the last 3 years that it's too ambitious, that we'll never get it through, that KCC will never agree to it. The vision and validate approach that we've taken was oh, that was completely out of bounds. You're going to be forced to build a bypass like we were. But no, we've worked very hard. I say we, it's the officers have worked extremely hard. We've gone to academics here at Christ Church University to provide us really solid evidence as to how this approach can work. It's a really ambitious transport strategy. And to the specifics within it, Councillor Turnbull, you mentioned Whitstable Heights. There is funding available. It takes time to come through. And it does take, we've literally only just seen funding from Fernham Homes for buses through Windsheep. It does take time to come through. And unfortunately, there is no local plan that can make these things happen faster. But what you can do is put them in there so they happen. And if you look through this transport strategy, every one of these strategic sites, whether you are for them or against them, has sustainable transport measures within them. And this is the thing, there is a huge focus on sites within this. I've had a large number of emails from people who have sites in the area they live where they want me to oppose the plan. I've also had a large number of emails from people, particularly in the area where I live and in other areas, where they want me to vote for this because the site that was in their area has gone. The thing is that we're not voting tonight on national infrastructure. We're not voting tonight on the water companies. We're not voting even on national housing targets. We're voting on this plan. And it's been said several times tonight that we'll still be in presumption that it won't change anything. Well, voting against it won't change anything. It definitely won't change anything. This is the only way that you can change something. This is a step towards getting us out of that situation. Voting against it won't stop a single spade hitting the ground. There are already sites with planning applications in, and yes, they may come forward, but the only way that we have any chance of making local decisions on how developments are carried out, whether those developments will have 10% sustainable and affordable homes, whether they'll have 20% biodiversity net gain, whether they will have sustainable transport measures. The only chance we have of making sure that that happens is to pass this plan, get it into action and get us moving forward. Thank you.
Councillor Nolan.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I've been listening with great interest to some things that have been said. And I do understand, I've been in politics now for some years, it seems like a lifetime. And I do understand that one has to be open and listening to one's residents in the wards. But we shouldn't mislead people. So I would like to say that to the people in the gallery, did you know that there was an all-party working party on the local plan for over a year? Did you know that there were many iterations and changes? So it wasn't just a dreadful cabinet pushing this forward. I lived in Green Hill for 22 years. I was a child bride. I came. They told me, don't you worry, by the time your children are 11, there will be a new coastal secondary school. I left in 2005, no new secondary school. It's now 2026. Come on, keep ringing that bell, because that bell has been ringing for 40 odd years. This local plan is something that we have to get through. And I dispute that it's not innovative. I dispute that it's not new. The nutrient credit scheme of a way of undoing the logjam is something that is innovative. The transport policy is innovative. And also, I've said this before, I make no excuse. Whenever the officers came back with more brownfield sites, we sent them away to find some more. There are more brownfield sites in this local plan than it has been in any other local plan before, because we do not want to concrete over fields if we don't have to. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Naomi Smith.
Vote. Sorry. Thank you, Lord Mayor. I represent a ward which was built out in the 60s, 80s and the noughties. Sea Salter didn't exist as a ward in the size and scale. It certainly wouldn't have had 2 councillors 50 years ago, because it's a series of estates that weren't particularly well planned. But they are full of people who have moved there. And the people moved from South London, but now I'm sure Councillor Andrew Harvey will be setting up barricades to stop people moving into the district. I can't believe that I'm hearing such sort of almost reform type comments about people where people can and can't live. Talking about luxury homes. A luxury home on the seafront will be upwards of over £1 million, possibly £1.5 million, whereas a 4-bed home on Whitstable Heights is nearer 500k. It's a huge difference to how people can afford their homes. It's a huge difference. And the chutzpah of certain people who to sort of pull up the drawbridge, I find astonishing. Coming to presumption. Yes, we are in presumption, and Councillor Carnac is right. We could be in presumption for a long time. We have been since 2019. You know, and it goes on and on and on. However, currently in presumption, we use the local plan from 2017. And if you don't have, and that's not fit for purpose now. It doesn't deal with how we live now and how we hope, you know, and it certainly doesn't have all the gains that this plan has. By not having a plan, you will just be stuck in presumption and stuck with the old plan. We need to support this so that we can push this forward and get all the good stuff out of this. I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Any more speakers? Councillor Edwards.
Thank you. Many of the points that I had originally written have been made, but so I'm going to try and comment on where I think the debate has gone. I feel it's very important to put to Reg 19 consultation this local plan. I think we have improved it massively on the one that we inherited. In particular, we know that the Reg 19 plan has to be sound, has to meet national, legal and regulatory frameworks. This plan does that. In addition, we have made sure that we've got net zero homes, we've got 20% biodiversity net gain, and a whole range of open space environmental criteria in this new plan. All those things will improve our district. I want to comment on the fact that people are saying that it's not the case that we can reject planning applications that come forward that don't fit with the plan. They have to be sustainable. The standards by which we rate them is exactly as Naomi Smith has said by the 2017 plan. We need a new plan with higher standards in order that we can judge sustainability for developments, whether we're in presumption or not, in the planning authority of a better standard. As I say, I'm trying to make it you know, I'm thinking it's really difficult for people to imagine the transport strategy because this plan actually starts in about 4 years' time. I think, as Alex Ricketts has said, it's an ambitious plan. I understand that we don't at the moment have control of buses. I understand there are not good enough systems at the minute. However, this local plan puts in place 17, if you start from now, years of investment in transport. That will be slow, it will be incremental. We've got plenty of opportunity to contract with different bus services. We may well, through the national government, anyway, get the ability to do this, as particularly as we go into a unitary, as urban areas have in metro cities now. So we anticipate different ways of being able to contract about bus services going forward. So I think to criticise it on the basis that it's unrealistic on the basis of what you see today, tomorrow, and maybe even in the next couple of years is wrong. I think what we need to do is back the ambition that this plan has got. And I feel as well that you have to read the details. I mean, some people, I feel, have maybe not looked through the transport strategy, have looked at the walking and cycling, have looked at the reallocation of road space, and plus the changes of parking that are planned to move cars out of city centres. This will reallocate space, will change the way we can walk. And a vision and validate approach was really difficult to get through. I realised that, and it was a success. and it will work because it will mean it'll be monitored and can be managed going forward. So standards are better. I need to stop. So standards are better for all those issues, and I do believe that therefore we should back going to Reg 19. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Dawkins and then Councillor Campbell.
Oh, gosh. I've been doing this quite a while. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've already wasted 10 minutes, 10 seconds. Right. Yeah, there's so much to say. I mean, yeah, there is just so much good stuff in this plan. And I did mention a few in the cabinet, and loads of you have already said. And I just want to pick on, you know, the 20% net gain, the tree canopy, you know, and as Councillor Edwards just said, I mean, I think there's two parts of this plan. There's the sites, and then there's all the policies, the strategic policies, and all the evidence that backs that up. And it feels like sometimes we just look at that bit, understandably, and then not all the rest. And you know, we are in a situation where, you know, landowners have put their site. No one's mentioned that the landowners want to sell the sites, you know, tonight. You know, they're going to do that regardless. They want to sell. They're going to sell it. So you either allow them to sell it without this plan, where you're going to get some fantastic policies to strategies, such as the net zero ready homes, or it just goes wherever, and you don't get that. And that is the line. You know, that is what's going to happen. And I know there's people in this gallery and people that emailed, they're upset about those sites. But the seriousness of it is the landowners are going to sell, and they will sell. I mean, someone's mentioned presumption, Councillor Carnett, and, you know, yeah, what you say is true, but there's a little bit of misinformation in there, you know, and that's not fair to be spreading misinformation. This plan is about moving in the direction of what's going to happen next. If we don't go in that direction, we're just stuck in presumption forevermore. And once we have that, once we start moving towards Reg 19, then it's just going to have more legal weight, and we can move towards those standards. And that is what happens. And Casey actually said that. So there you go. You can't be saying that it's just going to be this way forever, because that's not the case. Beacon Road, someone mentioned that. The one problem was it's got to get that community site. You know, if you want to have that community centre and all the sports facilities and all that, that's going to cost millions and millions of pounds. So, you know, that's a lot of money for a community group to raise. This is a really amazing compromise. You're going to get an amazing community site there that's going to be packed with loads and loads of great stuff. There's just so much to say. I just feel, you know, it's really important that you understand this plan is about getting higher standards. It's about making sure that builders, when they build their house, they position them so the solar panels are actually facing the sun, so you get full optimum energy out of it. You know, not just putting them anywhere they like. So just please read everything else in this document.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell and then Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I've got two matters that I'd like to raise this evening. Firstly, the process behind public engagement and consultation. This Regulation 19 edition is the third iteration of the plan under this council, with previous Regulation 18 versions issued in early 2024 and 2025, late 2025.
In both consultations, residents across the district provided detailed, considered responses, but it's difficult to ascertain where they've been listened to or if their comments were even considered. And then we had the overview committee on the 5th of March, where around 12 members of the public, the majority from my ward in Wincheap, spoke passionately about the local plan, in particular their objections to the inclusion of the strategic site allocations at Merton Park and Brooklands Farm, amongst others. However, the minutes make no mention of their contribution, and it's as if it had never happened. At a time when public engagement in local politics is so low, to ignore the engagement of people who gave up their time to speak in what for many would have been quite a daunting experience speaking in front of this chamber is shocking and does not paint us as their elected representatives in a good light. I hope that someone takes this point on board and reviews how we address issues raised by residents at every stage in the consultation process. Next point I'd like to raise is about the submission process itself. We've heard many times tonight about the strong desire to get this regulation plan submitted and the talk of dire consequences if we don't. My concern here is that we will be submitting a plan that the inspector will strike through with the red pen because it is in many ways not robust and it is not sound. The sustainability appraisal is an absolutely vital document, as pointed out by many councillors tonight, and is one that the inspector will be all over. It assesses each of the strategic sites against several criteria such as air quality, biodiversity, heritage and water. And the document is a sea of red. When I first read it, I assumed that the consultant who wrote it had a nosebleed. We've got double negative scores in many categories across each site. And it's no good saying, well, we can work out the detailed mitigations at the planning stage. To meet the soundness threshold, we need to have that done prior to submission, and we haven't. And to reiterate the point raised by Councillor Carnock earlier, all those developers who were unsuccessful in getting their sites into the plan will attack the weak strategic sites, and we will face multiple challenges. And this is what happens when a less than robust plan is submitted under Regulation 19. I'm not making this up, this is what happens. So there will be pain down the line if we make that submission now. So I commend the team that's pulled this plan together following the focus consultation in late 2025. It cannot have been an easy task, and the result is a well-drafted and professional-looking plan. But inadequate time has passed to provide the essential assurance required. So I believe it is premature to make the submission at this stage. We need to do more work on the plan, review the inclusions of all those red strategic sites, however long that takes. Take a pause, do the hard work now and submit when ready and avoid pain down the line. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thomas. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lots of people have spoken really well today. There's lots of things to say. The first thing I would want to say is I've personally have no input in this local plan. When it comes to biodiversity, and we've got 20% net gain and all that, if you didn't build on all the lovely fields we got in Wincheap, you'd have 100% biodiversity. Bus first policy. I've driven through Wincheap, from Wincheap through to Canterbury. You're on the A28, which links Ashford to Margate, and it's the main ring road into Canterbury. So when you come to try and take the lane out and put it, I can't say it's going to work. People with bus first policy, I've said this before, I can't see how it works, so we don't control the buses. So if it doesn't work in 4 years' time, we're going to be knackered. In 7 years' time, I might get a bus pass. So if it does work, that might be quite a good thing. The presumption, we're in presumption now, and we have been for quite a few years, not since 2019, I can't remember the dates. But basically what happens is when you're in presumption, other sites come forward because we are. Now, we had a local plan, and because the sites weren't built fast enough, we was a site come forward in Hurston, and that's what's going to happen. That the other sites will come forward, the sites in the local plan won't get built. What will happen is, all the time you're in presumption, other sites get built, and the ones that are in the local plan sit there because they're in the local plan and they're guaranteed basically planning permission, but there's no force for them to carry on. When it comes to the nitrates, which is a good scheme, but you're still polluting a river, all you're doing is paying, and it's going to pretty much work out about £9,000 per connection to the sewage system. Okay, I know that for a fact because I've gone down it. So there's lots of things in the local plan, but the biodiversity is there, lots of things have been said. But I just can't get my head round how you're going to build a bus lane, a cycle lane, a car lane. You know, I live in Herne Bay and I know no secret of that. So if Canterbury wants to stop people coming into Canterbury, that's fine. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. If we don't have any more speaker, I would like to invite Councillor Heaver. Go ahead.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I could speak for about 30 minutes on this local plan, but you'll be very relieved to know I've only got 3. So I'll make it quick. Thank you for your enthusiasm. I've been listening to the residents of my ward, and I agree with them that this local plan will be an unmitigated catastrophe for Whitstable and, in my view, for the coastal towns and the district as a whole. The one reason I'd like to focus on is water infrastructure, one of my favourite subjects, and one that was brought up by Councillor Forrester earlier this evening, to my delight. Before I do that, I would like to pay tribute to the respected community groups and the individuals that have gone out of their way to submit really thoughtful, well-researched input into this local plan. And they feel unheard, they feel that they're not being listened to, that the consultation process is basically faithfully recording comments, putting them in a black book, putting them in a drawer and forgetting about them. The people of Whitstable do not like this plan, they do not want this plan, and I'm just telling you that in case in the course of being in the administration you get slightly cut off from what people on the doorstep are saying, because they don't want it. I want to focus specifically on why they don't want it with regards to water supply, because as councillors in this chamber know, last summer and this winter thousands of homes in this district had water outages, and I don't lecture them on what the impact of that was on local families, because I know many of the councillors in this chamber were on the front line dealing with families with disabled kids and with other issues or with livestock. It was a disaster. And yet, when we had an opportunity to cross-examine South East Water at Scrutiny Committee 2 weeks ago, they presented the data to this council. I put some hard copies around if anybody's forgotten it, which clearly shows that the total number of properties in the local plan infrastructure delivery plan that South East Water cannot accommodate from 2029 to 2042 is 10,412 homes. 10,412 at 2.3 residents per dwelling is 23,947 people without water coming out of their taps. That's the plan we've all been asked to vote for tonight. And it's very well saying that by 2029 South East Water may come up with a new plan, but we don't know what that plan is. So to ask us to vote for this tonight when we don't know what the plan is and we don't know how much water capacity there will be is condemning 23,947 residents of this district to having no water. And I can't possibly vote for that, and I don't think anybody, any conscience, can do it in this chamber either. We also had, briefly, I'll mention my other favourite subject, sewage pollution, at a steering group meeting of Southern Water, who, to be fair, are actually investing in improving the system. They could not tell any of the councillors present, including myself, Councillor Turnbull and Councillor Cornell, when they would meet the statutory target set by the regulator of 10 spills per year from one outfall, Swellcliffe number 1, one outfall in one town, in one part of this district. They did not know, they could not tell us. So if they can't tell us, the expert and directors of that company, when they'll meet statutory targets, how can we have confidence that this plan is built on a sustainable, sound and sensible way? It clearly isn't, and we should not vote for it.
Councillor Hazelton and Councillor Chris Cornell.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I particularly want to reflect on housing need, and I was really moved by Councillor Mellish and Councillor Butcher's accounts of their kind of childhood and the opportunity that council housing gave to them. And I reflect that back in the 1960s, I lived in a 3-bed owner-occupied home with my brother, and our next-door neighbour, they had 6 kids. It was an identical house, but actually the living experience was very different. 4 girls in 1 bedroom, 2 boys in another, bare floorboards and no central heating.
there was no privacy, there was nowhere to do homework. And when Catherine came next door to me to play, she never wanted to be downstairs or in the garden because she wanted just to sit in my bedroom for one. So I think it behoves all of us who are lucky enough to have secure, like, roofs over our heads to reflect that even an identical looking house next door contains very many different...
Councillor Hazelton, I'm sorry, could you start again? Because people couldn't hear what you were saying because of the noise. I do apologise.
Do you...
Yeah.
Do I... so they've stopped it outside. I'm so sorry for those of you who already heard. So I was telling you about my... So when I was a child back in the 1960s, basically... You get to hear it again. Anyway, Catherine was my mate from primary school, and she was one of 6, and the 4 girls slept in one bedroom and the 2 boys in another. And in fact, the youngest child, her little sister, had some physical disability, and I suspect it was probably cerebral palsy, but I was too young to know the difference. I do know that she had to be carried up and down the stairs. And I lived next door, and it was just my brother and me, and so we each had our own bedroom. So when Catherine came over to play, she didn't want to be downstairs or in the garden. She wanted to be in my bedroom because it was like, you know, a girl's bedroom for one. So my point is that those of us who are lucky to have always had a secure roof over our head, just looking at the door next door, you don't know what lies behind it and what need lies behind it. So people have criticised this plan for both lack of ambition, but also kind of that it's not viable because it's too ambitious, and that sort of worries me. If we put forward a plan for the inspector to examine that didn't demand a lot from developers, more than the minimum MPPF, like 20% biodiversity net gain. I'll raise my voice so you don't have to hear about Catherine a third time. And the 30% social and affordable homes on greenfield and mixed development sites. If we weren't asking the developers, demanding more of the developers, then we certainly would be lacking in ambition. So it is, you know, there will be people coming forward. And when people say, where are the voices being heard, the people, your residents who you say you have listened to, all of those representations do also go forward to the inspector. And the inspector can call during Reg 19 those people if the inspector wants to examine them. But the point that I want to end on really is about the people who don't get in touch with you. The people who don't get in touch with you are the people who are languishing on the housing needs register, who are overcrowded, who aren't able to mobilise around their homes, who haven't been able to get upstairs for 5 years and have to strip wash in the downstairs kitchen because of disabilities. So those people who are inappropriately and inadequately housed, they don't sign petitions, they don't come to meetings, but that doesn't mean their voices should be heard. So I'm saying I will support this plan going to Reg 19, and I am listening to the people who have not come forward so that your children and your grandchildren have secure homes that will built to high standards with community provision, play parks, green space, infrastructure, transport, schools, employment opportunities and more. So if you've got vision and ambition, vote for it. Thank you.
Councillor Chris Cornell and then Councillor Charlotte Cornell.
Our current local plan isn't fit for purpose.
Sorry,
no, go on.
Councillor Cornell, can we take a short break, please?
Oh.
Please. We need to get that noise. 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Mic drop.
We're ready to start. Ready to start.
Get the gavel.
He's in the toilet. So should I start? I'll start without him. No?
Yeah, okay.
Councillor Chris Cornell.
Our current local plan isn't fit for purpose. It was designed back in 2015, at a time where effectively Crown Paints were the largest employer in Herne Bay. There were less than 50 Airbnbs in Whitstable and under 500 people employed in the whole of the UK wine industry. You could have walked down Canterbury High Street and you would have seen a Blockbuster video and people overhearing what to do with a closed BHS store. Nasons and Debenhams were cathedrals of our high street, and the University of Kent was proudly the UK's European university, like we were proudly members of Europe. Things change, and you need a new plan to evolve with the times, to have the foresight and the vision, as Pat said. This new plan unlocks new infrastructure that we need for the new chapter in our town, in our district. It delivers space for 4,785 new jobs. And that's not just barbers and coffee shops, like the paper says. That's 13 football fields worth of manufacturing space. That's 2 new secondary schools, 4 new primary schools, a 140-bed hotel in Canterbury. It is about giving the financial certainty to the university to consolidate student accommodation on site and grow its conference facilities, an innovation hub for Canterbury West, a new economic anchor for Whitstable, a widening of the scope of the Altera, policies to support viticulture, low-carbon energy, a last-mile delivery station, and gigabit-connected homes. This is an approach which allows and unlocks ways so Debenhams and Nasons can become viable again. It provides the homes which employers need to attract the best talent, and it unlocks infrastructure in our towns. I sat on that call last week, Stuart, and I'm very clear that I've seen the plans for the new development at Swalecliffe. I think we got shown them in a picture. The new infrastructure at Whitstable is doubling the capacity by 2030, and unlocking that type of investment requires certainty about when you're going to build and how you're going to build it. It is over £70 million worth of investment. Nobody makes substantive investments like that unless there is ever a plan in place. I wasn't born in Canterbury, and like many in the chamber, I've chosen to make it my home. And I hope that I've been able to invest in it. But when I moved here, I didn't think that nothing would change. I didn't think that I was moving to a town which was an artifact. I thought that it was a thriving, ambitious, and modern place to live. And we need to write that new chapter so that our kids understand that it is still that. This local plan is not about a public service which says that all of the community speak in one voice and we have to listen. Public service requires that we act in the welfare of everyone, including those people who don't speak. It requires vision, it requires challenge, and it requires a plan. And this is what I am agreeing and supporting tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Charlotte Cornell.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This has been an emotional week for the district, but from students to residents to local media to the officers working all the extra hours that they have, we can all see how deeply we care for each other and how much we love our district. And when we're vulnerable, we come together. I lecture at one of the city's universities, and so many students I teach, when they finish their studies and when these bleaker days have passed, they want to stay here. So many former students return here to raise families after a few heady and regretted years in London. And rightly so, what a district we have. The brain boom our retained and returning students bring is absolutely not to be sniffed at. A changing and growing economic scene, as Chris alluded to, is to be celebrated. So further to the changing reality of what a household looks like, as my friend Paul Prentice alluded to earlier, we need to build to welcome and to encourage growth. Everyone here has the right to a home, but to the future families of 2043 with parents who are maybe graduating from our universities this year in 2026, you should be able to live here too. Family homes of 3 or 4 bedrooms are wonderful, but to those who call them executive or luxury, it's to simplify or to call illegitimate a whole generation's dream of home ownership. There is a moral imperative to build the right homes as more of us live longer, live singly, get divorced, or are left alone after sharing spaces with loved ones no longer here. We do need more homes. Homeless children, damp homes, old homes that fail healthy home standards, all these things should be confined to the history books that Canterbury are so good at being in. Any voting councillor can be proud of that. A vote for the plan today is a vote that takes us towards that progress. I'm really disappointed by the accusation of the choices that Cabinet and others made were politically expedient. Maybe that's how things did work in the dark ages. But I can assure you that we debated, disagreed, compromised, consulted, and listened again, legally and legitimately. Those drafting things well can also not at the same time have been having a nosebleed. I mean, even Daffy Duck can realise that's daft. I don't want the chamber to forget a generation. It's all too easy, and I've heard it again and again and again tonight from people who look in the mirror and seem to have forgotten that they represent others who don't walk, talk and act just like they do. You aren't voting for executive homes. You aren't welcoming Mar-a-Lagos. There's no millionaire rows we're voting for. This is a sound local plan that allows others to live safely and healthily in our district, to plan to study, stay, grow and share our spaces. We are voting for plans where buses will come, unlike some who think that a magic bus factory will somehow appear if you don't have a plan. We are grounded in reality, practicality and getting it done just as we promised we would and as we were voted to do. Thank you.
Councillor Lee Castle.
Sorry, Cabinet Member Variety, excellent. Thanks everyone, thanks to excellent speakers, thanks to Andrew, thanks to the officers. Let's cut to the chase. We're between a rock and a hard place. We've been on a long journey over the last 3 years. Sleepless nights, vast discussions, Facebook posts, Facebook videos, Facebook arguments. If I had my way, we'd see far more power and flexibility given to local authorities, and we'd see government give us a much more serious role in infrastructure and social housing. But the reality is tonight, we cannot rewrite the national planning system in this chamber. I'm disappointed in a few things that have been said tonight, and I've been screwing away making notes. Councillor Watkins, excellent councillor as you are, 23,000 houses are in this plan. In a ward of 1,800 households, you mentioned 0.01% and 20 homes. I would say that's a win for your ward, personally. It's disappointing it was also mentioned sites in the area that suit. Well, I wouldn't say it suits when we've got 2 very complex sites over in Chesfield with 2 Lebanon councillors, 2 in my own ward, and 1 large site in Barton ward with 3 Labour councillors, to name just a few. I'd also like to thank Councillor Heaver in discussing my conscience if I was to vote for this plan. When there's a Green Party, they openly said publicly how they would vote in advance, even given the legal advice received to this council. Another disappointment. And let's clarify one key thing. Southern Water's rep's exact words were, "We are told what the number is and we have to close that gap." They have annual updates and they will reflect the numbers coming through. It's not a good system, it's a bad system, but it's a system we have to deal with. Apologies, I've been making lots of notes, thank you. I'm a little bit disappointed, as I didn't say anything at the budget meeting. Councillor Harvey, again, I feel slightly personal about these property elements in Herne Bay, so I made a slight list. The ambulance station is part of the regeneration scheme. It's in the papers, maybe check them again. The Neptune, there's discussions behind the scenes. The toilet blocks that were uninvested for 15 years have got ongoing discussions. And the Trivoli Arcade went to Cabinet and a large substantial capital fund is being spent on it. So again, papers need to be checked more detailed. Presumption. It's really frustrating that everyone wants to bat around the discussion about presumption. There are 3 key elements to presumption, as the officers have laid out at various meetings. A local plan, a 3-year previous supply, and a 5-year future supply. Now, there is credit in what councillors have said that we are not meeting all those tests. But if we choose tonight to definitely not meet one, then we have no hope of meeting the others. I'm confused a little bit about the other things that have been said about pain and that when it goes to inspector, these all seem very personal, and I understand ward councillors do feel that they have to defend their own ward, and I respect that. But as Liberal Democrats, we always believe decisions should be taken locally and as best as they can with the best information we've got. Yes, the housing numbers are difficult, landscapes are going to change, but change is never easy. So to end, this plan has some positives. It should deliver schools, infrastructure, the transport strategy, biodiversity net gains, 160 hectares of new accessible open space that's currently locked away as potentially farmland. But most importantly, it allows, rather than leaving the decision to developers and planning inspectors, it leaves it to local people. Because imperfect local control is far better than no local control at all. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, everyone. Could I ask Andrea to take a recorded vote?
So that vote is carried with 23 in favour, 12 against and none abstaining.
We have no urgent business for tonight. So thank you all for coming. This meeting is now closed.